audience. Yeah, I see in here many audience from other university too. Okay, this guest lecture was held in a collaboration between NTNU and UNES. The purpose of this guest lecture is to increase student knowledge about research methodology in physical education and sport. Thank you very much to Dr. Philip X Fuchs, PhD, for collaborating with us by virtual lecture to share knowledge about the methodology from basic and approach to scientific research to implementation of method, statistic, and the generation of scientific output. Special for Bu Titin, yeah, Mrs. Sri Sumartiningsih, yeah, thank you as the moderator in this guest lecture and for facilitating and being the contact person for this event. And thank you too for Professor Dr. Tandio Rahayu, yeah, Dean of Faculty of Sport Science UNES, and for all lecturer for sport study program Universitas Negeri Semarang. And thank you for all audience joining in this virtual lecture, and have a nice lecturing. Yeah, thank you, and time is returned to moderator. Thank you, Bu Titin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Setio Rahayu, MS. Thank you for nice speech. And I also thank you for the Dean of Sports Science, UNES, Professor Dr. Tandio Rahayu, also in here. Also, the Dean from UNJ, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, yes. Sports Science, Johan Lupis. Thank you very much for joining in this virtual lecture.
Thank you.
Professor Tandio, do you have something speech to say to Philips before we start?
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Philip X Fuchs, thank you very much for your time, your valuable time to share knowledge and experience with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the invitation and your time as well.
Okay, you stay in German now?
My name?
You stay in Germany now?
No. I live in Taiwan right now, working for the National Taiwan Normal University.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Back to you, Ms. Titin, please.
Okay, thank you. In here also have the Dean of Sports Science, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Dr. Hansah Lubis. Do you want to say something to Philips? Welcome speech? No? Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Titin. Hi, Mr. Felix. Thank you very much, Mr. Felix, for information in literacy in sports science in the Indonesia, special Mr. For University Negeri Semarang. Thank you. I will to watching and listening for the seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, the Dean of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Sport Science. So you have two participants, all is the Dean from different university. And thank you also all participants. So not only from Universitas Negeri Semarang for Pasca Sarjana and from undergraduate school, also from other university that join in this virtual lecture. Okay, before we starting about your presentation, I would like to introduce yourself. So I to share screen your CV. Okay, bisa mas. Okay, here is Philip X Fuchs. So he's so younger than me, very young, but already have 2 doctoral. So his education in 2018 until 2020 is PhD in methods, model, and technology in the University Casino, Southern Lithium, Italy. And in 2015 to 2020, he studied in sports science and kinesiology in Saarbrück, Austria. Wow, 2-time PhD for the youngest age. That's very good. And here is his scientific work experience. 2018 until present, he's a project coordinator in Europe Research Project IMID. I don't know what is this IMID, University of Saarbrück, Austria, in Department of Sports Science and Kinesiology. And then 2018 until now, he's a reviewer in several international journals. And 2016 until now is in athletic training, also lecturing for student freelance. And this is 2016 until now, his work about scientific consultant and athletic coach for Youth Olympic rower, Saarbrück. And he's for research, is lecturing in volleyball biomechanics for undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral student in National Taiwan Normal University. And then on May 2018 to August 2019, 3-month research study in Taiwan, University of Taipei, and National Taiwan Normal University. Oh, and here is his special, is about martial art. So 2018, he's been invited speaker at international seminar on biomechanics in martial art. I think he's specialized in Kung Fu. So even though he's so taller, but he's very good in Kung Fu. Okay, and he's so many scientific publications, and his impact factor in scope is very high. I think it's 8. So, okay, this one. I think too big. I'm not reading all. And Mr. Philip will be shared to you after this. Okay. Is it okay, Philip?
All right, very good.
Okay. So, thank you. So, because the time is running so fast, so now the time is yours, Philip.
How much time do we have in total?
Kasih waktu berapa lama? How much time? 1 hour?
How much
Yeah.
time?
It's not clear, your voice. I'm not here.
Do you hear me?
I'm not here.
Your voice so little on here. Please speak up more loudly or bring your microphone close to your mouth. Maybe that is because your headset. Yes.
Is it different?
Now this is very different. Now
Okay.
your voice loudly and clear on here.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, I was asking how much time do we have?
1 hour.
Okay.
Or do you have more time? It's okay, up to you. So I will be happy if you have 2 hours more.
I think to make it not too rushy, I prefer having a little bit more time.
Okay, that's good. So I'm happy for that.
Otherwise, it's maybe a little bit difficult to follow.
Yeah.
So you see the screen now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. Then thank you very much first for the invitation, for so many participants. That's really wonderful. And thank you for your time. Thank you for the introduction. I hope I can tell you today and also the next session some things that may surprise you, hopefully. My goal was not to talk about the most standard things, but about things I have not heard a lot at university. And I think from my experience in science, I think these things are very important, and for science specifically. But obviously, all things about science they tend to be theoretical, and I can understand that many students don't like theoretical things because not everyone wants to become a scientist. So I also try to talk about some things that are so fundamental that hopefully you can get inspired and apply some of them, not only for science, not only for your thesis, but maybe even in other working environments and for your own development in terms of how to assess things, how to be critical, how to learn, and how to evaluate what other people are saying. Because this is fundamentally all different things that lead to the creation of knowledge, which is ultimately the goal of science. Thank you for the short introduction about myself. I want to summarize a few important things about me and about what I plan for the session to give you a feedback and a background to assess for yourself and make your own opinion about what I say, because you always need a background to know what other people are talking about, what you want to think about it. So as correctly said, I studied in Austria and in Italy. I made a PhD in sports science and one in methods, models, and technologies. This one was very heavily focused on statistics. I did internships in the UK, was working in EU projects involving 6 countries, and nowhere in these countries, in Austria, Italy, the UK, and the partner countries from the projects, I heard at least sports scientists, especially nature scientists, talking about these things. And I want to go from very fundamental things of how to approach science to the very specific ones to how to write your outputs. The theory part of it is to improve your understanding. This is, of course, the fundamental thing in the very early stages of approaching science. And the practical part of it will be to work or to give you first some help and some ideas. What is important in writing your outputs? An output, it can be a thesis you're working on, can be a seminar work you're working on. Ultimately, for a scientist, it should be scientific manuscripts to be published. And we also try to work on them in a way together. So you can try to apply these things I'm talking about today. You can try to apply them on your own work. Send it to me after the session within the next 2 weeks. And I select some to talk about it and to see what we can do better. In this session, I want to talk about things you will probably not expect. It's very theoretical things that can and should be applied in science, in work, maybe even your personal development. These things will include even philosophy. So it's definitely not what you may expect for nature sports science. I am a biomechanic, movement analysis. I'm working with qualysis, Vicon, force plates, and so on. And I tell you, some parts of philosophy, and I will explain to you why, are fundamental even for such very nature science aspects. I will not, the next session, I will talk about purely methodological stuff, statistics, and so on. But to be honest, I don't want to focus too much on single specific knowledge or skills in how to implement them. I will talk about things you should be aware of to understand the meaning. But not like, okay, if you use this software, you press here and there, and then you have a good result, because these things are, they are important to do, and they are important to be taught at university. But now I see it as a special occasion for me to present something special, and for you to listen to a foreigner, maybe with a different background, to have something unordinary. So I want to start with the very basic, that a good scientist in the very beginning of doing any research should always be unbiased. This means you should have no interest in a specific outcome. Every one of you who may be a PhD student and was already writing a manuscript, or also if you're a master student, even bachelor student, and you were reading articles, you have read about the conflict of interest section. And this is in fact really important. Usually this one is empty, because if there is a conflict, that doesn't look good. So also it happens that people want to try to hide it. The problem is, if you have an interest in a specific outcome, your whole work will tend to look to get this outcome. And this is not objective creation of knowledge. It will come with some problems that will damage in the very end your own work. The wrong attitude of approaching research, or a not very beneficial one, would be to have the will to prove something. If you are a fan of a particular sport, I mean, many people who study sports science, maybe they come from a certain sports, they played soccer, basketball, martial arts, whatsoever, and you have an interest in it, that's clear. You have an opinion, like every human being has an opinion. But as a scientist, it should not be your goal, even not unconsciously, to prove your point. This will always lead to mistakes. Your goal as a scientist and doing a scientific work should be to create knowledge. And it doesn't matter if this knowledge supports your personal belief or opinion or is contrary. It does not matter. One very bad result of being biased in the first place, and to prove your point, would be that you select from the outcomes you find, you select only these ones that fit your picture of reality. And this is not open, objective knowledge. So rather than selecting what fits your reality, you should objectively assess the data and create a picture of reality. That's a very important difference. The problem, if you approach science having a specific interest, is that you will not see all the knowledge in the field already to derive and to create the best methodology. Because you will be someone who is a little bit narrowed, focused on what you want to see, rather than what really exists. And this can often lead to results that are not significant? The reason is because you chose the wrong hypothesis. If you are approaching without bias, it's much more likely that your hypothesis will be justified by what reality already knows. And even if your results are not what you expect, then there must be a reason. And investigating the reason in the end will show significant results. So the reason why most of the articles published are showing only significant results. I mean, there are only very little articles that show we hypothesized something and it was not true. We didn't find it. The reason is because the hypotheses were not really backed up by the theoretical background, what you do in the introduction section. So there was lacking research and a narrowed focus on what you want to find rather than what is really to be expected to be found. So this is, in fact, a very difficult challenge because it means we all as humans have opinions, but it means you need to restrain from your emotional judgment. And here we come a little bit into philosophy, because even Stoics said, by the way, I studied a little bit philosophy. That's why I have this association with it. Even the Stoics said, you should not be controlled by your emotion and try to be rational. And of course, as a scientific who wants to generate knowledge, you should try to be as rational as possible. Maybe not in your daily life, but if you do your job at least. Don't follow your personal opinion and don't be driven by your personal belief. The worst thing a scientist could do is to have a mission to confirm yourself. You should just detach from yourself and just do your job. Do your best in the literature review. Make an open, neutral opinion based on what you find and derive the hypothesis based from it. And then find out what is the best way to investigate these hypotheses. Then there is almost nothing bad that can happen. No matter what you will find, it will be valuable. The other way, if you unconsciously you try to confirm yourself, there is a chance to be disappointed. And this being disappointed in a way of not finding the results you want, and then you cannot sell it to the publisher. A very important point is to not easily just believe or trust what you read. And this is not only for science. This is not only for any other job in the world. This is for your whole life, basically. Don't easily trust and believe what other people say, even if they are scientists. It's not bad to not trust everything. You can check for yourself. Everyone can say something, and every meaning and opinion is valuable, but it doesn't need to be truth. And it's very hard to find real truth. Usually it's only a certain number of findings generated by science. Some of them have a better background or foundation in terms of how the studies were done, some not so much. So it's not about truth. So it's also not about just believing something. And as I said, or as in the introduction stated, I'm from Germany. I know my history very well, so I can tell you this is really really important. So it's important to be a little bit skeptical, critical. Doesn't mean you say everything else is bad, not at all. But just check for yourself, because there must be reasons. And there are two ways of checking the validity of anything that is said or written or anything you hear. The first thing, it addresses to the context itself, the things that are said in a statement, in a sentence. For example, if you read in the introduction, volleyball is a very popular sport. This is a single statement, and you can check if this statement is correct or not. Usually in science, it's a good practice or required practice to use a reference that is supporting this. If there is no reference, then you must wonder, how do you know? Why do you say this? Is it made up? Maybe yes, maybe no. You cannot know. So there is just no fundament, no evidence for it. That's the first thing. Assessing the validity of the content itself, what was said. The second thing, so the first thing, I hope this is clear and easy. Check the reference or check why people say this. The second thing is how statements are connected, how they are linked. And this addresses reasoning, conclusions, relations. This mostly addresses to a greater schemes of things. The question you can ask yourself is, if you read a whole paragraph, for example, consisting of many different statements, does the reasoning make sense? Is it logical? Is something we say very often. But most people have no idea what is logical and what is logic. And I want to talk about the second part because it's really very important and very powerful. And logic is, I describe it as the art of correct thinking. The definition, if you Google it, is that logic is reasoning that is conducted or assessed according to strict principles of validity. So a very important thing is, it is not something that is intuitively in our nature or something that is individual. For me, this is logic, for you, it's not. This is not logic. In logic, there are very strict rules, principles, and these define if something is valid or not. And logic is, logic is a core discipline of philosophy. And this is why I say I will talk a little bit about philosophy. It's also part in mathematics and IT. But we should remember that philosophy is the mother of all sciences. All other sciences came from philosophy, and the goal was always to create knowledge. And philosophy created this core discipline, logic, as a set of rules that need to be followed to create reliable knowledge. So these rules apply to all kinds of science, no matter what you do. But I have never seen in sports science that people are taught how logic works. And logic, as I said, is nothing that is maybe a little bit like this, and for me is different than for you. No, it's not. Most people in the daily life and even in science have a relatively poor understanding for logic. And this is no offense to any scientist, because I think we just forgot that this is a very fundamental part of science. The valuable part of this logic is that logical rules are 100% abstract. This means they do not relate to a specific content. These apply to everything you say. It doesn't matter if you talk about sports science, about psychology before competition, about nutrition, about your leisure time activities, or about chocolate, or your favorite cat. It applies to everything, and you can replace all the content by anything. The logic behind it does not change. So this is why it is so valuable. It's also valuable for your daily life, for your personal development. And this is also why it is so powerful, because it means it's not related to the content. I can assess the validity of things that are said based on logic about anything in the world, not about only sports science. It doesn't matter if we talk about COVID, about politics, about history. No, the logic is all the same. And there are certain rules of logic. If someone talks about any topic in the world, I don't need to understand the topic, but I see if what is said is logic or not. Of course, I cannot tell if the content is correct. If someone is an expert in history, I cannot know if the facts he says are correct or not, but because I'm not an expert in history. But if the way he links different sentences, the way how he thinks, how he makes conclusions, must follow logical rules. So logic can assess the correctness of reasoning, not the facts. No idea about the facts. And I want to display this using the following example. Let's go through it very slowly. There are four statements, numbered 1, 2, and 2 options for the third statement, 3.1, 3.2. Let's consider the first 2 as pre-statements and the number 3.1 and 3.2 as 2 optional conclusions. So if someone says, statement number 1, all balls are green, and then an independent second statement, this object is a ball, and then you see the object next to the statement. Now, we read the next 2 statements, the conclusions, and think about what is correct. The first one is the mentioned object, you see next to number 2 statement, the mentioned object is green. Or the other object, the mentioned object is red. And now the question is, what is true, what is correct, what is the role of logic in it? And the power of logic, as I said, is to abstract everything. You can replace every single word in all these statements by variables, like in mathematics. This is why it is a subdiscipline in mathematics as well. So the first one, instead of balls, you could say A. Instead of green, you could say B. All A's are B. For the second one, you could say, this object is C. So C is an A. This object is a ball. This is what I mean by making everything abstract. So I mean, if you are not aware of logic, then you must think there is some conflict. If you see these statements, something is not correct, right? And you would obviously say, if you see this ball, you would say, number 3.2 is true. The mentioned object is red. But based as a conclusion of the 2 statements, 1 and 2, the option 3.2 cannot be true. That's not possible. This is logically incorrect. The only logical correct answer is 3.1, the mentioned object is green. So this would be this object, the mentioned object is C, is B. This is very, very clear from a logical point of view. As I said, 3.1 is logically correct. As a conclusion, logic is always referring to conclusions made of statements. So I don't need to be a ball expert. I don't need to be a color expert to know that if some person says the first statement and the second statement, that only 3.1 can be correct. Otherwise, there is an error. It's not possible otherwise. There is one exception. If the characteristic red, now the abstract D, so if we say 3.2, the mentioned object is red, you can replace red by D. If D can in the same time be the same like B, then it could be possible. This is the only exception. So if there is a third statement, red can never be the same like green, then it is 100% safe that only 3.1, the mentioned object is green, can be logically correct. If you see that something is logically correct, but the content is not true, because you see the ball is not, it's not green, it's red. We can all see this. Then the content, the validity of the content of the single statements must be wrong. There must be a wrong statement. So someone was lying to you. Either someone was lying to you, or the logical consequence of the consecution is not correct. So I hope that this example shows you this is completely independent of the field. As I said, you don't need to be an expert in balls, you don't need to be an expert in colors or anything. This abstraction goes so far that basically every sentence in your language you can phrase, you can reword it in logical terms. In this example, you see the A, this. By the way, how can I? You see my mouse. Yeah. So if you see this equation, this can be a sentence, a statement. You can word in your language or in English, German, any language you want. And this sign means not. So I don't want to go into detail too much, because for you it's not important to learn these signs, but it's important to learn to get an understanding for what the abstraction means and what it makes. So you can replace all these things by certain contents. If A is smoking, and this means not, this is not smoking. And in the same time, you have a specific heart functionality. For example, a certain heart frequency, things like this. You can quantify your functionality of the heart. Then one means something, if a condition is fulfilled, then something else will happen. Then what will happen? C, you have a healthy condition. So this phrase, this logical phrase means if you don't smoke and in the same time you have a certain specific heart functionality, that will lead to a healthy condition. And for all these functions, there are certain tables, rules that tell you if something is true or not. By the way, can you see the right furthest column, or is are the other cameras in front of it? Now it should be okay anyway. Okay. So this is important to understand because it's 100% abstract and it's following strict rules. And depending on whether the one condition is true or the other is true or both are true or false, T stands for true, false, F for false, the outcome must be true or false. And this should just show you that it doesn't matter what we are talking about. You can replace A, B, C for everything. Maybe the content is wrong, but the logical system behind it is true. And if you know, okay, number A, capital A, is true, and you know C, this one, is also true, you can observe it in reality, then you must always know by logical rule that this conclusion, that if these together happen, always this will follow. This is true. And this can be helpful in combining different information from different studies. Let's say one study found out that, as I said before, if you don't smoke and if you have a specific heart functionality, then you're healthy. Okay. If another study finds out that you have this specific heart functionality, which was quantified as B, after running 10 minutes every day, this could be D. That means if D, then B. If you run 10 minutes per day, then you have a specific heart functionality. You can put this function into this one here. And then the conclusion, the logical conclusion would be, you don't need any study for it, that if you don't smoke, it's this component, and you run 10 minutes per day, it's this component leading to B, then you are healthy. This is a combination of knowledge from 2 studies, and you don't need a new study for what is the effect of running 10 minutes per day. That is also a reason why many studies published are somewhat not really valuable, or you already know it, or everyone should know, because basically it was known already, and you can logically combine. Logic feels natural for almost everyone, for us, but in fact it is not. It's very theoretical. I try to show you by showing these functions that it is not something that is natural and everyone knows, everyone understands, not even the slightest. And these are very, very simple examples. But if you understand a little bit, that's something, a little understanding for logical rules. You don't need to know these symbols, and you don't need to be able to express very complex statements in logical functions. Even without all this, just a little bit an improved understanding. Oh, wow, okay, logic is not something that just, I just have it because I'm smart. That can affect your way of thinking and your way of how you think and assess other opinions and what they say. At least for me, it was like this. When I started studying philosophy and I was interested in logic, and I thought, oh, wow, okay. And it changed how I thought about things. And the whole thing is that the study design, the great scheme of your work for a scientific study needs to be logic. The methodology you create must logically make sense to be able to answer the research questions you raised. Otherwise, you can find something out, you can make statistics, it can be high-level statistics, very nice, but the things that the statistics tell you is not really what answers your questions. This happens many times in research, in daily life, in television, in talk shows about political topics. It's devastating, really embarrassing. This is a short joke. A mathematic person told me. I don't find it very funny, but I've heard mathematic people are laughing about it. 3 logicians, or mathematics, you can replace for them, it also works. 3 logicians enter a bar, and the waitress asks, "Hey guys, do you want some beer?" The first one says, "I don't know." The second one says, "I don't know." And the third one says, "Yes, please." And now the question is, for all of us who are not professional logicians or in mathematics, what is so funny about it? And for us to learn something, why are all the above answers the only logically correct answers? And the reason is because the waitress addressed the answer to all the 3 guys. So the first one, he only knows what he wants. He doesn't know about the second and third one. So if he does not want a beer, he can say no, because as long as one in the group does not want a beer, he can answer, "No, not all guys want a beer." But if he wants a beer, he doesn't know if all want a beer. So he says, "I don't know." The second, it's the same situation. He seems to want a beer, but he doesn't know about the third one. So he says, "I don't know." And the third one concludes, okay, if the first and the second one did not wanted a beer, then they would say no, so they want a beer, but they didn't know. So I know now, okay, because I also want one or more, we also want a beer, all of us. Yeah. I have a small quiz that shows you also an example of logical thinking. You ask a company to print game cards following 2 rules. So you have only 2 rules for the company, how to print the game cards. on the one side, you want to have a letter, and on the other one, you want a number. And the second rule is, if on the one side with the letter, if there is a vowel, like A, E, I, O, or U, then on the other side, there must be an even number, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. So if there is a vowel, there must be an even number, not an uneven number. So the company makes the prints, you receive 4 print examples. And now we assume, you know that the company followed the first rule. The first rule is correct. They followed it, they did it, you know for 100%. But you're not sure if they followed the second rule always. And you need to control the cards now, if they followed the second rule. The question is, how many of the cards and which of the cards do you need to turn around to check for yourself? And the challenge is, you could turn all 4 cards and then you know. The challenge is, because you're a lazy guy, students, you want to turn only as few as possible. So my question, and we can make a short break now, get some water, go to toilet, 5 minutes. And I want you can talk with your peers about it. Just think about it. How many cards do you need to turn around? And which ones? And after the break, I will tell you how many and why. Is this okay? Good. Then let's make 5 minutes max. Get a water, check the posture, and see you soon.
Okay, so now it's break for 5 minutes, and all of you can answer the quiz from Philip. Okay. Silahkan dijawab pertanyaannya. Ada berapa kartu yang akan kembali diputar, dan silakan untuk para peserta bila akan menuliskan pertanyaan bisa ditulis di chat box, dan silakan dibuka videonya, dan nanti untuk presensi dan e-sertifikat akan diberikan pada saat terakhir, sesi terakhir. Monggo. Waktu 5 menit saja istirahatnya. Oke, silakan istirahat dulu. Welcome back, Philip. Okay, so I think they're still thinking. I think
so too.
It's need to logic.
Sorry?
Need to more thinking. It's logic.
Yeah. No worry. If you ask normal people, not professional logicians or mathematics, only 5% of the people know the right answer.
Mhm.
If when I tell you, you will think, or maybe you know, but if you don't know, don't feel pitiful.
Yeah.
And afterwards you will think, oh my God, this was so easy. So that's very interesting. Yeah.
Mhm. For mathematics, statistics make this very easy, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Oh, Fajri want to answer.
Is there someone
Yeah,
who
Fajri,
wants to
Ahmad
give an
Fajri
answer?
want to answer. Okay, you can open your mic.
Hello, Philip.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Fajri. Now I'm studying in National Tepe University Nursing Health and Science in Shipai.
Mhm.
And I would like to answer your question that this is my own logic to answer these questions. I think the participant should return it back all to the company because they did not follow both of the rules that given by the participant. Even the company only followed the first rule, but the company did not follow the second rule about the vowel and then the even number, the P and the 7. So it means that all is did not valid for the participant because they asked to specific requirements to the company for the cards. I think that's my logic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for this answer. Because of course you are true. This is not the logical correct answer. But you know, I love this answer because you are not following the rules of this game I sent to you. So this is wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. So okay, 5-minute break. Yeah. So the logical correct answer is the 2 cards you need to reveal is the first one and the fourth one. And I want to explain why. Because the first one is, I think, quite clear. You have a vowel, and the rule is if you have a vowel, you need an even number. So you see a vowel here. So you need to check if on the other side is an even number. The third one is also quite easy, I think. You don't need to turn this around because it's not a vowel. So what do you care? Any number behind is okay. You know they followed the first rule, so there must be a number. That's okay. You don't care about anything else. This one is an even number. So do you care about what is on the other side? A vowel or a consonant or not? And most people would intuitively say there should be a vowel. But this is not what the rule says. The rule only says if there is a vowel, then you need an even number. But it doesn't say that if there is an even number, you need a vowel. So in fact, you don't care what is on the other side. It is a vowel or a consonant, you know, because they followed the first rule. But you don't care. If it is a vowel, the second rule is correct. If it is a consonant, then the second rule is correct. So no need to turn around. And this one is maybe somewhat between easy and difficult. It's an uneven number. So if there is a consonant, it's okay. If it is a vowel, they would be against the second rule. So there must be a vowel. You need to check it. This is my last thing about the whole logic thing, and I want to clarify one thing. I wanted to talk about this not because I think this is enough to make anyone understand fully what logic is and to apply it for yourself. I was telling you about it because I think it can be very powerful and very maybe interesting. And as long as only one participant here in this section at any point of their life thinks, ah, that was interesting. Maybe I watch a YouTube video on logic and then I find out more. I'm already satisfied because this is so powerful. In my personal experience, I had so many discussions with people, conversations, arguments about professional things, where people thought I'm very expertised or very smart or clever, and I was not, really not. But my ability was only to see when other people do a mistake, and they don't see it. I didn't need to be an expert in this field. And it helps you in everything in your life to understand things better, to see through lies of other people. So my goal was to hopefully maybe only inspire. And but certainly I keep the promise, this can be very, very powerful in doing good science, because this is logic is for methodology what methodology is for statistics. It's the baseline, it's the fundamental of the more specific future steps. Okay, I want to talk a little bit now about what is important in research, in scientific research, in how to structure work. As you for sure know, this is the one of the most common ways to structure works. It can be a little bit different in fields like in biomechanics. This is very typical in sports psychology. Sometimes introduction is split into one or two different subchapters. For your thesis, it may be a little bit different. Sometimes professors want a distinct literature review or something like this, which can be part of the introduction, or a professor says, no, make an introduction, make a literature review, and make hypotheses, and then make methods. But that's all not big differences, and there are valid reason to do it differently. But the main idea is always more or less this structure. If you prepare a manuscript, the easiest thing is to just go to any journal and to see the guidelines, what they want in which chapter. This is the easiest way to have the perfect structure, basically, for your manuscript, for your thesis, because this is what is the scientific standard. And you can read in the, I added one link, but basically almost every journal provides this information. What kind of info needs to be in the introduction, in which sequence, in the methods, how to do it. So to summarize, I will go through it briefly. Like the introduction always contains a background, the relevance to current literature, deficits. I summarize the questions, goal, and hypothesis as one thing, because I think they are basically all the same. If a professor says you need to write the questions and then the goals and then the hypothesis, that's okay. Others say it's all the same, because the goals are always to answer the questions, and the hypotheses are always what you believe you will find from these questions and the goals you want to reach. Then methods is the overall implementation. The important thing is to have all relevant information for anyone else to do the same study. That's it, simple as this. Results, people make often the mistake to have any sort, even if it is the slightest, sort of interpretation or valuing. No, results is just pure facts, cold, plain facts, nothing else, and nothing that you did not generate from your methods. Then discussion is also, of course, the assessment, the interpretation of the results. to put it into a context. Many journalists or professors want to have some practical applications, or they want to know the limitations of discussions of the study. And conclusions is like a summary, a short summary of the outcomes. I think a good way to see it is condense the response on your main research questions. The condensed response, this is usually a conclusion. You can add also future perspectives. The things where I want to add something that is, you hear maybe not in every lesson or from everyone, is the relevance of the introduction heavily depends on the scientific opinion. There are scientists or journals that say relevance is very relevant, and there are others that say relevance has absolutely no importance for any scientific work. And I want to explain why. Because scientific work is the generation of knowledge, and knowledge does not necessarily be relevant. If someone says, I want to know how fast some grass is growing, or how much grass is growing in my garden, you can make a scientific study out of it for 100%. And of course, no one else in the world will care because it is not relevant. But how do you know today what is relevant for the future? So by making a study on the grass in your garden, you can make a study and it can generate knowledge, but it's not relevant. So opinions differ, and you must acknowledge all different opinions. And especially if you want to submit to a paper or submit your thesis to a professor who asks for relevance, then this is a very justified reason, and you have to go for it. But just so that you know, it's controversial. One thing I want to address also, many students sometimes have a problem. I feel like, what is the difference in the literature you use in the introduction and the discussion? And the easy short answer is that the introduction should include everything that creates or provides the knowledge the reader must know to understand why you selected this method. And in the discussion, you use the references, the citations that create the context for your specific results. This can many times be the same reference, the same study. But the aspects of it that are required to understand for the reader, yeah, this is why he chose this sample size, why he did this test design, why he invested jumping and not running, and so on. These belong to the introduction. The ones when you talk about your results in the discussions and you have an improvement of 10%, you need to bring it into context. How much is this? Other studies found this one. Then you refer to other studies, or maybe the same one, but you refer then to the number. Like, what did this other study find out? They found out 8% there, 2% after 2 weeks, or whatsoever. So it's a different aspect on what you refer to. For many students, this is not clear in my experience, and discussion is most of the time the weakest part, in my opinion, of student thesis. So, and this is the reason why, in my little experience of helping students to improve their work. For me, the most important part in all these research steps is the question, goal, and hypothesis section. Many people may think maybe results is very important because this is basically what you find out. I think no. Question, goal, hypothesis. The purpose of the study is the most important part, and I explain why. Because this is the basis, the fundament of your whole study. Everything that comes before your questions, goals, and hypothesis must stringently lead to these questions, and more importantly, everything that follows after must clearly come from your questions goals hypothesis. All the methods, all the results deriving from the methods, all the discussion, and so on. And it is not as easy as one may think to find the right questions, the right hypothesis. This reminds me on the logical aspect we talked about before. If you make errors there in the way you review the literature, in the way what you think is a deficit, in the way you ask the questions, then all the rest of your study may be for the trash. If you ask the wrong questions, you can work, you can make great, you have a great sample size, you have very sophisticated statistics, great results, like super significant, everything very impressive, and it's not the right thing. And you can put it into trash, basically, if someone is very critical. So the critical errors, because you must think about what are potential errors, you should avoid them, and the best is to avoid the most critical ones. And critical errors are the ones where you cannot just afterwards make some adaptations, some changes, and then it's okay, but where you need to redo some chapters completely new. So very easy to understand, an error is even more critical if it comes very early in your work. The earlier it occurs, the harder or impossible it is to adapt later stages. As I said, if the question is the wrong one, your method is the wrong one. Your results may be great, but tell you nothing or not the right thing. So I want to focus on these two first chapters. Introduction, method. For me, there are three critical phases in these methods. And you should be careful when you are at these stages in your work, when you think about your master thesis or doctoral studies, think about these three and proceed carefully. The first one is, as I said, defining goals, because if the goals are not the suitable ones, then everything else is for the trash. I want to give one example. If you missed something in the literature review, and you think there is a deficit, a gap in knowledge, but for reality there is not, because there was another study and they did exactly the same. And you just don't know it because you did lazy literature review. And then you think, oh yeah, this I can do this because it's easy, no one knows about it. You do it. What is the purpose of doing this? At best, if you are very lucky, you can say at least, oh, someone else did it, but I want to say if I can repeat it. Like this can be a valid reason to do a study, repeatability. But this is at best, if you are lucky, the best purpose of your study then. The second critical phase is in the methods section when you develop the great study design, the overall design. This includes the sample, the characteristics of the sample size, the experiments you run, the devices you use, the variables you calculate, and lastly, the statistics you run. And you should be aware of all these single things before you run the experiments. Because if afterwards you find out the device you used was not really well validated in the literature, then you need to do it again with a different device. If later you see the data, it looks good, and you think, oh yeah, I run the statistics, and then you see something and you think, oh yeah, and maybe now I should not only run a correlation analysis, but also some difference analysis. But my sample size was good for the correlation, but it's too small for a difference comparison between two or three groups. Then your sample was too small. You need to run experiments again with a new, bigger sample. So this is very inefficient if you make these errors. And the third one, really critical, is, I think, the stage where you process your data. If you have your raw data and then you start working with it, many of the data in movement analyses and so on, especially, for example, it's only one example, you filter them. Like in kinematics, you use Butterworth filters and these things, or pass filters, bandwidth filters for EMG data and so on. If you filter, for example, in a wrong way, and then you calculate variables, you run statistics, you do the visuals, the figures, the tables, and so on, you interpret them, everything is for trash if the filtering was not what is the suitable way for this kind of data to be filtered. You need to filter the data again, and everything from there on you need to do again. This is the reason why I think these three things are very critical. And if you are at this stage, be very sure before you go to the next step that the first step was the correct one. You can check these things by having a look into the literature. That's always the first thing. Just check what are there some studies that use the same device, that try to answer similar questions in a similar field. How did they do it? What kind of statistics did they use for this purpose? What was the sample size? Why was it like this? And so on. Compare different literature and try to identify the reasons why someone did it this way, why someone else was doing it in a different way, and identify the best practice. And very important in this step is if you find specific critics on certain methods. So there are critical articles published about LPS for tracking positions, for using Blunt-Altman plot for reliability, and so on. For almost everything, you can find critical articles that explain, because they analyzed it, the strength and the limitations of devices, of statistics, of things that should be considered when applying these methods, and so on. So this is quite important. And just read these things, talk with your peers about it, with your tutor, with your supervisor, and finally ask your supervisor before you go into the next step. Yes, I think it's a good help for a student to be aware of these steps. Don't make mistakes there. And I have not been in Indonesia, so I don't know how the teaching culture is there. But now I work in Taiwan, and I see it's very different in a way to what I was used to in Europe. In Europe, it's a very open discussion, very critical discussion, and it's very normal that students can raise their hand and they say, why is this like this? I have read a different article. They say this is wrong what you say. So how can you explain? In Taiwan, most students I met, they would never ask something like this to their professor, especially not in class, because this would always be almost like an offense. So I don't know. I have no about Indonesia, but just think about this is not an offense if you ask a question. It just helps to improve your skills and the quality of your work. So my recommendation would be not to be shy to ask these questions, especially, of course, if always you are polite, and ask these questions also in your own reports. When you need to do a presentation, do not only report your findings and what you do, but also report on your future ideas, on the questions you have that are unsolved so far, and include the other people and your supervisor in how can we proceed, how can we improve. Don't go there empty-handed. Think about it first. Think as best as you can, as good as you can, but then include them and be honest about what you know and what you don't. That's, yeah. The introduction, I said, is important for me because it's the basis on which everything else builds on. And from this point on, stringency is very important. Every chapter follows stringently, one leading to the next one. This goes on the macro level for the chapters itself, introduction, leading to methods, results, discussions, and conclusions. I think this should be clear. This goes at meso level within chapters. Even in a chapter, it should be clear why this chapter is there, and it follows and goes to the next one and the next one. It should be a clear line. Stringency means to have a clear golden path. And even at micro level, meaning every single sentence, it should be clear for the reader why you have this sentence with this statement and why it leads to the next one and the next one. Very straight line. If you visualize stringency, a bad way would to jump from A to B to C in any direction. So running in zigzag, it's very, very unclear for the reader, why now this, now you talk about something else, and so on. It would be good, at least good, if you have a straight line, a path, from the first word of the introduction to the last word of the introduction. You know the direction and you follow straight words, having a straight, clear structure. And the best would be if even the gaps between these letters, this is how I visualized it from A, B, C, there is always the same distance. In terms of a text, in practical terms, what I mean by these gaps, by the same distance, is the efforts that need to be done in your mind by thinking to follow the messages in this text. It's not so good if you have a lot of information in one sentence and then you make a jump, even if this jump goes in the correct direction, but you need to think there is a lot of information missing between two sentences. This would be, it's better than zigzag running, but it would be the best to have a straight line and easy to understand by having always the same effort of how much you need to think. And this stringency, this is now an advice I experience in other countries. My advice is not to fake stringency by using words that suggest a stringent structure. Stringency comes from the relationship between statements. And what many people do are they use these connective words like therefore, nevertheless, in contrast, in the beginning of a sentence to make both sentences to appear related. So I say, I like this day, therefore I go swimming. With the therefore, it seems they are connected. If the sentences are really, in terms of content, related, connected, then you don't need these words most of the times. And many people use these words where there is no relationship or only a very weak ones. And it is faking stringency. It is faking a connection between the statements where actually there is none. I experience this because there are tendencies of different countries to do this more or less. So these words, there is a general rule in scientific writing not to write something unnecessary. Remove everything that is not necessary. Also these words, especially whole paragraphs, if they are unnecessary, sentences, parts of sentences, or single words. And in scientific writing, the space you have is limited, very limited. In many journals, you have only space for 3,000 words. So, but you have a study, a very complex, sophisticated study, and you want to deliver a message in a very good way. So you want to put a lot of information, valuable information, into little space. This is why scientific writing makes it in an extreme way to reducing the words required to deliver a certain message. And this message must be as accurate and as precise as possible. So always ask yourself, you read a sentence, ask yourself, can I make it simpler, and can I make it shorter? One example that is a very simple rule that is almost always correct is this phrase, in order to, as describing the purpose of why you do something. There is almost never a reason to use in order to instead of just to. I go to a bar in order to drink a beer. There is no reason to not say I go to a bar to drink a beer. And when you are in the situation where you feel like, then if I remove the in order, then it is not so clear anymore what I mean, that the following part of the sentence describes the purpose, because only to could also be a direction, right? I go to the bar to drink a beer. Then most of the times, if it is not clear anymore, then something else with your sentence is wrong. Maybe it's too long, it's too complex, too complicated, some other linguistic problems. So I rarely find an excuse for using in order to. It's just one example, an easy rule you can remember. And the basic rule one of my former supervisors was telling me is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Writing an English scientific text is not so, you don't need to have very, very good English skills, because the language you should use is very, very simple, short, simple structure. Because you want to focus on the content, not make it sound very complex and complicated, and this is not the purpose of it. Or remove anything unnecessary or redundant. Never say an information twice, the same information twice. That's redundancy. Use the space you have for the most important information. And of course, the wording needs to be precise. There should be no misunderstanding of what you mean. You remember this joke, not very funny, but this joke with the logicians who says, I don't know, and yes, we want a beer. The information of what the first two provide that's not really valuable information. I don't know. The first one could also say, with the same amount of words, 3 words, he could also say that he wants a beer. I want one. Of course, this would not be the correct answer on this question, logically, but it would provide more information, even about the specific question. It would provide more information. So always find a way to put more information in the number of words you use, and to be precise with your information. One last big thing I want to talk about today is correct and preferred use. No, sorry, it's not the last thing, it's the second last thing. I want to talk about correct and preferred usage of common words and phrases. These are from guidelines from the American Medical Association Manual of Style, and they are, you should follow them if you are working in any health field. These are just few examples of words. Maybe one day you will use them in your thesis or a manuscript, maybe not, but there are many things like this. And it just should give you some examples of what correct wording means, and at what level you should pay attention on it. So first example is the usage of abnormal and normal, or negative or positive. And an examination, a protocol, an experiment, a laboratory test is never abnormal or normal or negative. The result of it may be, the observation may be. So saying, for example, a negative COVID test result that's correct. But saying a negative COVID test, that's incorrect. A test cannot be negative, the result can be. Accident and accidental is one example of having imprecise wording with not much information, because an accident can be anything. You use one word for just say that something happens, but you don't say what happened. Instead of saying I was involved in an accident, you can say I was involved in a crash, in a shooting, in a collision. It's no difference if you use the one word or the other, but the one doesn't provide any information. So this is the idea behind it. I want to skip one or two things for time reasons. Yeah, this is something as, because, and since. I think many people will use, of course, because you use it in everyday language, everyday life. And there are some problems with it, because all of them can be used to explain a reason for something. But as and since can also be understood as something else. So if there is the possibility of confusion, you should not use as and since for explaining the reason. And these two, there are two examples. In the red letters, she could not answer her page as she was examining a critically ill patient. So in this sentence, it's not clear if this second part of the language, of the sentence, she was examining a critically ill patient, if this explains the reason why she could not answer her page, or if this determines the time. During this time, while she was examining the patient, she could not answer. In a scientific article, this may be a very important difference, and as a reader, you cannot know what the author was writing about. So this is why some of these things you may think it's, oh come on, who cares? And yes, maybe in daily life language, no one cares, and maybe in a conversation, if there is misunderstanding, you can correct, and everything is fine, okay. But in scientific writing, someone needs to write you an email. Oh, how did you mean this? So this is why it's so important to be correct. It's, after all, the generation of knowledge. It should not be misunderstood. And also for since can define the time where something starts. She had not been able to answer her page since she was in the clinic. So is she was in the clinic the reason, or is it just since this, I mean, from this time onwards, she was not able to answer the page? It's something completely different, and you don't know. You basically don't know. Article, manuscript, paper is a typical thing. It's an article, and when it's published, otherwise it's not an article. It's a manuscript, it's a paper. Some say it's a study, investigation, and so on. Due to, caused by, versus because of and owing to is an interesting thing. I think it's a little bit difficult to understand what are the differences, but it's a very important difference with a completely different meaning sometimes. If you have this sentence, survivors of child abuse tend to enter abusive relationships due to intrapsychic conflicts. The question is, what does this mean, due to intrapsychic conflicts? And the meaning is very clear, but there could be a misunderstanding if you don't know these differences between due to, caused by, because of, and owing to. Because due to, if you replace it by caused by, they have the same meaning, due to and caused by, and because of and owing to have the same one. If you say enter abusive relationships caused by intrapsychic conflicts, then it's very clear. The relationship is caused by the intrapsychic conflicts. It's not you enter this relationship because of having an intrapsychic conflicts. So in the one way, I say, you have this relationship, the relationship is caused by this conflict, and in the other way, with because of, it would mean you enter in this relationship because you have a conflict. So entering because of conflict, or a relationship that is caused, can be something completely different. Can and may are things. Can always refers to the ability to do something, and may is the likelihood of permission. Many people use can, but they mean may. If you say you did an intervention and someone can use it to improve his health, that's wrong, because you can use it also, you could use it also before. Now with this finding, you may use it. Can means the theoretical ability, the power to do so. I skipped these ones and want to summarize that stringency and the clear structure in the text is very, very important. Try to make things simple, clear. Also in your mind, you need to be clear. Make things simple, short, reduce. Whenever you can reduce, reduce, as long as you don't lose information, relevant information. Be completely rational, try to not be emotional, and never in scientific language use manipulative language. No flowery language where there are some underlying meanings of words to make something look better or worse. Never put your own opinion into something. Don't repeat things that were said already, that's redundancy. And try to condense information. Precise and valuable, and lots of information in the space you can use. Now we come to the last part of today, and this is what you need for working on your own texts. And I want to make the offer to you that if you have, especially if you have currently some work you need to do, or you were writing a text, that you can try to apply the things I want to go with you now together, that you apply these things to your own text, try to improve your text, you send it to me, and I select randomly, except you write me, oh, please check my text, then I can select yours, but I will check it, select it randomly, and select it, and discuss it anonymously. So no reason to be shy. It's just an opportunity to send me your text, to improve it, and we can discuss it next time and see what is good, what can be improved further. What I want to do now is, this is one paragraph, the first paragraph from the conclusion section from a manuscript that was ready for submission for an +1, an international journal, not too bad, but also not one of the greatest, but quite recognized. So you should expect some quality, I would say. This is a paragraph I think is a very good example for this purpose now, to improve some text. Let's go through it together, and step by step, slowly, I want to show you some flaws and where we can improve it. So I read it for you to get a basic understanding. Within the general and in itself complex field of migration, the migrations of student athletes are specific. The present article shows that either the advantages or the disadvantages of migrations can never be limited to one factor alone, but should be understood in their interrelations and within wider social contexts. At the same time, the implications of these findings mean that solutions cannot be one-sided either. In conclusion, and to complicate matters even further, it is difficult to avoid the recent and unprecedented pandemic and COVID-19 disease, which our research could not address at that time, but which significantly interfered and may interfere in the future as well with the field of migration in general and student migrations in particular. So think about it for yourself. What do you think about this paragraph? Would you say it's good written, well written, or not so much? Maybe you have even some ideas. In my opinion, it's a good example of a very bad text. And let's take a look first at the sentence length, the structure, and the complexity of each sentence. And keep in mind what I showed with the stringency and the zigzag and different gaps between the sentences, and so the jumps that are made. So this is the structure of the sentence, of the sentences, 4 sentences. You see the first one and the third one very short, and the other one's quite long, especially the last one, very, very long. My supervisor, one of my previous supervisors told me, never write a sentence that is longer than 3 lines. The reason behind it is keep it short, keep it simple to be understood. And if we summarize the statements in the single sentences, we could replace the first one or summarize it by student athlete migration is specific. This is basically the message delivered in the same in the first sentence. So we already see it. It's not really a lot information and valuable information. Remember, this is the first paragraph. There is nothing that was coming before. The second one could be summarized as there are more than one factor, and there are interactions. It's also not very much information. The next one, solutions cannot be one-sided. Oh, okay, that's just yeah, one short statement. Okay. And the next one describes the difficulty of avoiding the unaddressed pandemic which interferes with the field. So let's think about these messages and in what kind of relation they are. I would say that there is no real strong relation between the statement that student athlete migration is specific and that there are multiple factors with interactions. The specificity of a field has not necessarily to do much with the number of factors and if there are interactions or not. The second and the third one, okay, there is a link. You can say if there is more than one factor, then maybe a solution addressing only one factor doesn't work. So this is reasonable. The link between is okay. And then the next one, suddenly talking about COVID and about how difficult it was to address COVID, or they didn't address. Has nothing to do with anything before, except if COVID would be one of the additional factors, but this is not said here. So there is also no link between one-sided solutions and there was a pandemic going on. So we need to ask the following question for every single sentence, a different one. For the first one, why is specificity in this context relevant? Why do you use this statement? Just like this, in this paragraph, it seems like having no value. If specificity is making a difference for what you analyze, then it is reasonable to talk about it. But in this context, there seems to be no reason. For example, I did some research about technique and coordination in movements. And of course, if you have complex movements, you have more complicated neuronal coordination patterns and so on. And if the movement is very specific, then people in this field may handle these patterns better. But if you take a different sample size, they face more challenges in attempting to implement these movements and so on. So there is some content relevance why using this, why talking about specificity but here I don't see any point. The second one is somewhat acceptable, but it doesn't tell us a lot of information. If this was in fact supported by the findings, by the results section, then you can talk about factors, yes. Just saying there are more than one is not very much information, so maybe it would be better to name the factors, to say what are the important factors, what is the interaction. Just like saying, oh, there is more and there is a wide context and interactions or interrelations, they call it. It's not giving us much information. The next one can also be acceptable if it is what the findings really support. We don't know. We don't need to assess this now. And the next one is, as I said, why do you introduce a completely new topic that has no connection to the previous statements? And especially something that is politically very problematic, but more important, you did not analyze this in your study. So you should never introduce something in your conclusion section that was not investigated in your study. That's so there is no reason to keep this. It should just be removed. It's very unbiased to talk about something that you didn't analyze, that you didn't investigate. That's just speculation. Maybe that's another rule. Never speculate. Never speculate. Never even use the word speculation in your manuscript. It's like a red flag for every reviewer. So I think the first one should be rethought. If it is really relevant for the content of this article, we don't know now, we only know this paragraph. Then if it is relevant, okay, then it needs to be adapted, improved. If not, it should be removed. Second and third one can be improved because it's no valuable information, and the fourth one should just be removed. What I want to do now is, in the next step, we assume that all these sentences are reasonable and there is a justified reason why to have them in this paragraph, and we just focus on the linguistic parts of it and try to improve these 4 sentences. So I said, like the fourth one, for example, I would say just remove it, don't talk about it. But now we assume, okay, there is a good reason why to have it, and we try to improve the phrase now. So step by step, we go through these 4 sentences. The first one was, within the general and itself complex field of migration, the migrations of student athletes are specific. First of all, I think that's an easy one in itself. What kind of information does this add? If you imagine with the same sentence without it, within the general and complex field of migration, it would tell you basically the same. I don't see any information that is provided to me by adding in itself. That's empty word. Then the next one, migrations are specific. Well, it seems like the author meant that migration as a typology is a specific aspect, a specific phenomenon, different than other types of phenomena. Not a number of different single migration cases, not 5 migrations are specific, but migration is specific. Very minor thing. This is a bigger critic. They are specific, but in what regard? This sentence just tells us it's specific. So it would be very valuable to know in what regards is this specific, and it would be very easy to improve this by just saying are specific regarding, and then you're at your specific characteristics. It would be much more valuable to know them. This is a point. This is this whole. Why do you use complex? A complex field. As I said, if there is a real reason why this content of complexity matters for your research, then you can add it. Yes, but in this context, there is no complexity of the field. does not relate to anything that was said afterwards in this paragraph. So what this complex is doing is basically self-profiling. This is only showing the reader, I am working in a very difficult, complex field. I must be very smart. This is what the real reason, in my opinion, why this word was used. Again, it has no content relevancy. The general field, yeah, probably this is a little bit unlucky wording, because the field is probably not general, but maybe a wide field or not clearly defined field or something, but the field is not general, but cases may be generalized. But it's not really clear what the author intended to express here. In general, I would say that that this first part of the statement, within the general and itself complex field of the migration, I don't see a reason to have this. I don't see any value in it. In nothing that comes afterwards, the statement of specificity of migration in student athletes refers to other fields. It doesn't make a comparison. It doesn't matter what other fields are doing. It doesn't matter if this field is within a larger field or not. So there is no reason to have this part. And this leads to my suggestion, the first one, if you compare the original, the first one in front, to suggest the first alternative option, to completely remove the first part, and to basically just say student athlete migration is specific regarding or with respect to, and then naming the specificity of it. This seems for me the relevant thing in this statement. If the authors intended to refer to other phenomena in the field that have different characteristics or something, then you could add it before, but then you need to reword it, like making clear it's a comparison, and then you of course you also need to talk about this comparison and why you mention it. So the option A, the first option, A1, alternative 1, would be much shorter. It would be focusing on what is important, and it would add a specification. It would add valuable information. If you want to restructure the sentence, and I would recommend this in such a case, I want to suggest the second alternative. It's different sentence structure. Specific characteristics, and then you add them what they are, define different requirements in student-athlete migration compared with other migration types. This is probably what the authors somewhat intend to say, or at least it is what the topic can deliver and what their study can deliver. You have the benefit that if you are aware of it, the main statement, the main message in the first original version was that the migration is specific. This is the statement of the original sentence. And now in the alternative, you have basically the whole message of the original statement in just one word, just saying specific characteristics. And then you add more information, you add more value by talking about something else. The specificity is summarized in just using it as one adjective for the characteristics. Specific characteristics, then you have the specification. Then you talk about what do they do? What is the result, or why is it important to have the specificity? Why do you talk about it? Because they define different requirements. For example, if this is what the authors want to say. So you can add the purpose of why you talk about this. And in fact, there are even two purposes. One for why you talk about something is specific, And the other one, you can link it because these differences you can explain then is the reason why you make a comparison to other types and other fields of migration. So it adds a lot of valuable information. It adds purpose, two purposes in fact. It adds a comparison. So this means it puts something into a context. And having a comparison with a direction, saying this one is shorter than something else, this is faster, this one, and so on, again, adds your information. It's better than just saying, among all partners, we did something. Among countries or within society, yeah, doesn't add a lot. Second sentence, the present article shows that either the advantages or the disadvantages of migrations can never be limited to one factor alone, but should be understood in their interrelations and within wider social context. The first one I already talked about. This is at this stage no article, but it's a manuscript. The second one, either or. Clearly, the authors meant both. Either or means only the one or the other one. This is probably not what the authors meant. They meant both, so you can use both or just say and. The usage of limited seems unfitting here. Probably they meant it's explained by one factor, because certainly it is possible that something is limited to one factor, but maybe it's also two factors. But the disadvantages and the advantages, at least in this study, cannot be explained by one factor. This is what they meant. Never, probably never say never, because obviously as you haven't investigated every single case in the world, you don't know if it doesn't happen. One and alone is a subtle case of redundancy. Yeah, saying the same thing, two words. Interrelations is inter is the Latin word for describing something between things. Inter means between, and relation always refers to something between at least two factors. So interrelations is redundancy in one word. You can just say relation. And within a wider social context. This is a little bit confusing because the way how this phrase was constructed, it suggests that the understanding, how you should understand something, comes from the multiple existence of factors. And this is probably not true. The context defines the number of factors. So if you understand a wide context, then you have more factors than if you consider a narrow context, not vice versa. So what do I suggest? Keeping the same structure. The first option is to say this study instead of the present article. This study showed, always talk about what it did. It doesn't show, it showed. It showed that advantages and disadvantages, and instead of either or, of migration cannot, instead of never, be explained instead of limited by a single factor, but were affected by interactions instead of interrelations in a social context. I assume the authors meant interactions instead of relations, because a number larger than 1 in having factors. So if you have 2 factors, 3 factors, and so on, of course you can observe all single factors, but the problem, the real thing about this complexity of that you have when investigating a wider social context is that all these single factors, they interact with each other. So I think this is what they mean. So this is the same, the original sentence structure, with some improvements where the language is shorter, more condensed, basically the same information, a little bit clearer. I think it would be better to change the structure, to use a full stop to split the statement into 2 sentences. Then it's in this way, in the alternative 2, this study showed the migration effects cannot be explained by a single factor, full stop. Analyses should account for the social context and interaction effects of multiple factors. This is shorter, it's clearer, it's more simple to understand. It has no loss of information. It even has a little bit more information. Why did I exchange effects, advantage and disadvantage by effect? Because why do you make this distinction between advantages and disadvantages if it fits for both anyway? You say both, so it's no difference. So you can use a word that includes both. Cannot explain by a single factor. Analyses, so now I changed the sentence quite a lot. Analyses should account for the social context and interaction effects of multiple factors. I assume, of course, I cannot know what the authors actually mean, but I assume that they wanted to say this, that there is a wide social context in this topic, and that creates the difficulty of having multiple factors and makes the analysis complicated, and they interact with each other, and you must account for it because there may be interaction effects. And all this can be put in a very simple, clear way by rephrasing the second part of the original sentence into this second sentence in A2. Analyses should account for the social context and interaction effects of multiple factors. It's also then a little bit more a future perspective for research, upcoming research, which should be a part of the conclusion. Third one, we are almost done. At the same time, the implications of these findings mean that solutions cannot be one-sided either. The first problem I have here is at the same time means that things occur simultaneously. So if you go back, having multiple factors and interactions, it doesn't make sense to say simultaneously you observe solutions that cannot be one-sided. This is a typical example of what I meant in the very beginning with using these connective words, where you try to fake a connection in between statements, but there is none. You can just say the implications of these findings mean that solutions cannot be one-sided. It doesn't make any difference. This connectivity between the sentences that refers to a time occurrence is not reasonable. So this is a typical example of abusing these words to fake something that is not existent. Implications or solutions cannot be one-sided. Maybe they may not be one-sided, but they can, of course. This is the example for the usage of can and may. Of course, a solution can be one-sided, otherwise it wouldn't be a solution. It may be not likely that a solution works if it is one-sided, but it is possible, it can. So there's the difference between possibility and likelihood. the existence of multiple factors is not in conflict with one-sided solutions. Yeah, this is true, because you can have a problem that is defined by or is caused by two factors, but you can have a solution that is one-sided, maybe a solution, just biomechanical solution, not accounting for any psychological aspects and so on. But if both the factors of your problem are in the biomechanical field, this one-sided solution will solve all the multiple factors. So this is just not true. And then one-sided is a very vague word. You don't really know exactly what it means. Is it narrowly focused? Is it preoccupied solutions? Personally driven solutions? What is it? One-sided means literally you have two sides of a table or something, and there is one side or the other one. So it would be better to have a more precise word here. The original one, you can remove the first part, and you need to make some adaptations. The most important adaptation here is, I think, that this part, the applications of these findings mean, this is basically the same as if you say this implies. So you can replace all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words by 2 words. This implies that one-dimensional approaches, maybe this is more fitting of what the authors meant. Maybe not, then you choose another word. This implies that one-dimensional approaches cannot provide solutions. I still think cannot is a little bit too strong, but if you want to be closer to the original one, this could be one solution. It's shorter, have it more clear, no faking, less vague words. I think this is already an improvement. I think it would be better to not say one-dimensional or one-sided, but to say, for example, narrow-minded. It's very clear what it is then. And I wouldn't say cannot provide solution. I would say it's not recommended. So the last one is the longest one, and I don't know if it is the easiest one because it's quite bad, I think, or if it is the toughest one because you need to change a lot. After this one, we are done, no worries. So I read it again. In conclusion, and to complicate matters even further, it is difficult to avoid the recent and unprecedented pandemic and COVID-19 disease, which our research could not address at that time, but which significantly interfered and may interfere in the future as well with the field of migration in general and student migrations in particular. So as you can tell, it's very long, it's very complicated, it never has an end, and after half of it, you don't want to continue reading anymore. In conclusion, is again linking this sentence to the previous one. And now remember what was said. In this sentence now, they come up with the topic of COVID-19 and the difficulty to avoid this pandemic. How can this be a conclusion of what was said previously? Previously, they said about having multiple factors and one-sided solutions. This has nothing to do with now the newly emerging pandemic. This is a very good example again for creating, by using words, creating a link, the appearance of a link that doesn't exist. Yeah, this is not a conclusion. And to complicate matters even further, this whole part is nothing but self-profiling. This is just, look how smart I am. I'm working in a very complicated field, very complex, very, very difficult. Yeah. Does the difficulty of avoiding the pandemic really matter for the rest of this statement? The rest of this statement is the effect of the pandemic on this study. Does it matter if it was difficult or easy to avoid the pandemic? Actually not. It does not play any role. The result is it affected your investigation. It does not matter if it was difficult to avoid the pandemic, or if it was easy, or if you felt good, or you were at home, or anything. So here I wondered why saying it's a recent and it's an unprecedented, it's a pandemic and it's a COVID-19 disease. Isn't it enough to just say to avoid the pandemic? Maybe it's very important for this author to say it's a recent pandemic. I mean, it is not reasonable because now we know already that this would be wrong. It's an ongoing pandemic. Maybe it was very important to say it's an unprecedented one. I think the reason was they want to say it's unexpected, so you cannot prepare for it. We could not avoid it. And why making a distinction between pandemic and COVID-19 disease? Doesn't make sense. Just say pandemic, or just say because of COVID-19 pandemic or whatsoever, but don't make a distinction if there is no purpose of making a distinction, which our research could not address at this time. So this is maybe a very clear and easy thing to understand. If something was not addressed in your research, then don't talk about it, and especially not in the conclusion. If something affected your research, you may talk about it, may, not can, you may talk about it in the discussion section, but not in the conclusion. And don't talk about possible effects of it because you have not investigated them. So this alone is a reason enough to remove it completely. Yes, because it was not part of your research. Your research did not address this. So why do you talk about it in your research paper? Significant is a statistical term. So don't use it in a scientific article or manuscript in non-statistical context. If you talk like about politics, about your great success in training practice and so on, daily life language, significant has a slightly different meaning. It just means something like important or massive or great and so on. But it is a statistical term, and in science we use statistics, so don't use significant if you don't talk about statistics. It's an easy rule, I think. And especially this is a no-go in this context because you did not even investigate the interference of the pandemic. So how can you say it significantly interfered? You didn't even investigate this. And may interfere in the future as well. This is a pure speculation. You have no evidence for it. In this context, you don't even bring any reasons or justification why this may be a thought, a reasonable thought. So this is purely a speculation. Never speculate. And then with the field of migration in general and student migrations in particular. Again, what is the value of making this distinction? This distinction of a general migration and a student migration. In this study, the student migration was investigated, so they should talk about the student migration only, not about other types of migration, and not making distinctions that make no sense and were not even the topic of the study. And a second thing is that student is inconsistent terminology because before they were talking about student athlete migration. So always stick to the same words, use the same words if you are talking about the same thing. Otherwise, things get messy and confusing. is he talking now about something different than before? Was it student athlete migration before? Was it something different than now student migration? Or is it the same, but then why a different word? One alternative could be to replace recent, of course, because it's just wrong. It was not recent. And also at this time, you could not know, at the time of submission, they could not know if it was at this time a recent pandemic. It's, yeah, so it's just wrong. You may say just current, ongoing, or if the authors wanted to say, okay, it's important for us to stress that we did not expect the pandemic, you can say unexpected. But then you need to ask yourself, how many times in history does it happen that you expect a pandemic? It's, I don't know if I would use this word, to be honest, in the context of something that is usually always unexpected. Then if you use this sentence structures, like effects of the current pandemic, just use the brackets, add these specific effects. It's always bad if you are talking in vague ways about things. You don't really say what you mean. You just say, ah, there is something. No, say specifically what you observed. Say specifically what you mean. So many times reviewers will tell you something, a comment, blah, 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 this is not good, please specify. This is the reason why. Because they don't specify, they don't add the information. Effects of the pandemic, specification then, on student athlete migration, to have a consistent terminology, could not be prevented in this study. So if we assume this sentence is important for the study, is important for this conclusion, and we want to improve it, and it is important that we say we could not prevent it, then this would be a suggestion to make it a little bit better. It's much shorter, it's clear, it has consistent terminology, and correct one, and easier to understand. So this is my offer for you for the next session. To use any of your text, if you are currently working on your thesis or a seminar work or something, and you have a text already that you want to submit soon, then take it, try to remember or think about what we talked right now about, and try to improve your own text based on the keep it simple, stupid principle, and try to use correct wording. Make things shorter, clearer, more valuable, specific information. And then you can send it to me to this email address until 13th of May. And I will select some of your submissions. I will go through them, and if you want, you can write me please select mine, because I'm currently writing my doctoral thesis, and this is one paragraph of it. Please take only one paragraph, so 4 sentences, something like this. Otherwise, it's too long. So if you have a current work that is really relevant because it is your thesis, then you can say to me, yeah, please select this one. Otherwise, I will just randomly select some. It will be either way. It will be anonymous. I will not say whose work it is. And if you don't have any text of your own right now, you can take an old text of previous theses, or you can write any text or take a text from the literature. I would be glad to talk about I think 3 or 4 examples, or it depends on how much it is to talk about. Maybe even 5 examples you send to me in the next session. I want to do this in the beginning. And then in the next session, I want to talk about the real methodology, what people usually consider methods and statistics. And also in this part, I want to talk about some common errors and misunderstandings, but on specific statistical tests and how people do it, what they think these tests tell us, but in reality they don't. Things like this, how you can improve your understanding of methods and what you should be careful about when you use them. Yes, and next session will be on 20th of May, as far as I know. Good, that was it for me. Thank you very much. And
okay, thank you very much, Philip. It's very excellent presentation and very clear explanation for us. And this is for me, and I learned so much from you, also from the student. So how to write writing, how to correct writing, because in my mother language and English language is different. So we need to make how to clear and short as possible, right?
yes. It's beneficial for you as well.
Yeah.
Don't
And
make
simple.
it too complicated, too difficult. No.
Yeah. So make as simple, as short as possible and clear.
Yes.
So we need to do like that. And this is also for the student. All student, you need to have your report. So you have a task to make some paragraph, and then writing in English, because Philip cannot writing in Indonesia.
True.
Right? Or you can speak Indonesia.
No.
because in here have some you foreigner can speak Indonesian language very well, also can speak Javanese very well.
No,
So
unfortunately, I can only help you with English text. It's true, I didn't write it here. Please send me only English text.
yeah, we send in English. So in email to philip.fuchs@ntnu.edu@tw Taiwan, yeah, until 13th of May. So any question, please, you can raise your hand or you can write in the chat. Oh, I don't know, they are sleeping or still in here, still awake.
Yeah, maybe sleeping.
Yeah, so Philips, as you know, so like the problem for writing manuscript, always so many like a plagiarism. Actually, they're just writing same, how to write to some reference that they took it and then just copy in the manuscript and then write the name of the author. So maybe you can make a simple how to the student can to write correctly, like you do like that before.
Yeah, so my idea was I pick 3, 4, 5 of the texts the students sent to me, and then I will do the same like I did now, with having the text of the student athlete of the student, the original text, and I will go with all of you together next time through it. What is good, what is not so good, what we can improve even further, maybe. So if there are any questions now, of course.
I don't know. Anyone in here, please raise your hand if any question, or you give some chat. Usually there's so many asking, but I don't know, today they're so quiet. Maybe so shy to you, very shy, because you know, we are very poor to writing manuscript. So you can help us how to write correctly like that. Okay, so please raise your hand. In here, welcome, have a Professor Sugianto, is the coordinator program of doctoral program in physical education, Pasca Sarjana UNES. Welcome, Prof. Sugianto. Okay, so Prof. Sugianto, maybe you have any some comment? Okay. Oh, okay. So maybe this is have a different in Indonesia and in your culture also, right? Oh, this is Mrs. Siti Battle wanna asking something. Okay, you can open your microphone. Hello? No? Mrs. Baidu? And here also have a Professor Sugiharto, who is the professor in sports science. Yeah, Mrs. Baidu, please welcome.
Thank you, Bu Titin.
Good evening. Hello.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Phillips. I'm already hear your presentation. It's nice. I have maybe simple to me. I have question for you. How to write the best article? This start from the original research. Thank you. Because we should be published in Scopus Q1, Q2. I think it's difficult to me. So what your tips to write in the best of paper? Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mrs.
okay.
Baidu.
So that's
Okay,
that's
you
a
can
very
answer directly.
that's a very big question, because basically that's like 80% of the whole job of a scientist, right? So I think a very important part is to spend quite a lot of time on the literature review before you start doing any experiments, to get a very good understanding for, first of all, what was done already, and second, what is missing. And then taking your time to think about what methodologies you need to fill the gaps in the knowledge. So I spent at this time, at this stage of every new project, I spent quite a lot of time sitting in the sun of the balcony, just thinking about the project, the study design, and what to do, what I'm able to answer based on the data I have, and what are the limitations. So how do I need to adapt the design? And I think very important is to check in the literature the references that address specifically the things you do, the methods, like I said, the specific devices you use, the specific statistics. Especially in statistics, I see many publications where, in fact, bad statistics are used. Statistics are not very well developed in sports science, and it happens many times, very often, that publications run statistics that are not very good for the purpose of what they want to say. I will bring up some examples next session.
Yeah. Okay.
Where like 70% of the publications are doing a very bad job, but they think they do something very good, and they draw the wrong conclusions. And it's very dangerous, because it creates wrong knowledge. And I think it can be quite easy to make it better than the average by knowing these pitholes that are commonly done. So I will talk about some, and it's not complicated. It's not difficult. You don't need to study statistics for doing these things.
Okay.
But then the data will be more sophisticated. You can take more information out of the data, and this will make your whole. First of all, it makes the method section better, because people will see you do maybe more statistics, more unusual ones. You have a better way of how displaying them. It will help you for the discussion section a lot, because there is much more nuanced differences between the different, maybe you don't run one test, but three different tests, all about one topic. And then some are significant, some are not. And the different meaning of the tests tells you something about the data itself. So having a better statistical approach makes also the discussion much easier. And in my opinion, the discussion section is the area in the text
or the paper
where you can see very easily if a study is good or not. So if you just need to read the discussion section, and you can tell if it was a bachelor student, a PhD student, or a professional, and at what kind of level of application. And so the good statistical approach contributes heavily to a more sophisticated, more going into the depth discussion.
Okay.
Thank you. It's very good answer and very good question. Thank you, Mrs. Siti Baitul.
You're welcome, Bu Titin. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Nice to see you. Thank you.
And any else? So any else question? Actually, we always writing introduction is important also, but writing in the abstract is the most important.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I didn't talk about it at all. The abstract is maybe the abstract is the most important because this is basically what the reviewer, what the editors see first, of course. And the abstract is the most extreme part, of course, where reduction, simplification, putting density, putting a lot of information in few words, limited space, this is the most extreme example. And I think writing abstracts is not too difficult, but you need to clear your mind. Because many people are too stuck in their research, and their head is so full, and they are so deep in this work, in this study. When the way I do it is I write the manuscript at the very end. So I write the whole manuscript, and then afterwards I check the whole manuscript, and I make the first adaptations, first improvements. And then maybe for a couple of days, I do a different work. I check emails, I plan other projects, and so on. And then I read the whole manuscript again, and I make some changes. And in the same time, I refresh my memory what this study is about, because I'm working on many studies in the same time. And this memory is refreshed. But then I have created some distance from this study. I'm not so stuck in it anymore. And then with the distance, you have a clearer mind, and you can just think. And again, you sit down, go into the sun, enjoy the time, having a coffee or something, and just think about what are the most important things. If I have 10 sentences or 15 sentences, or let's say I have 1 minute to explain to my grandmother what I did in this study. The only difference is instead of grandmother, I would use statistical terms and these things. But how to make it simple, but to put everything inside.
Yes.
And then I think writing an abstract is not too difficult, but very important. Yeah. So my advice for writing abstract would be creating some distance to the topic first. Clear your mind, and then go there and make it just very simple.
Okay. Yeah, yes. This is make it clear make a simple.
Yes.
So sometimes it's difficult. Okay, and this is next to the question. The question is from Dr. Johannes Lubis.
Thank you very much. My name is Johansa, Mr. Philip. How about equipment for collects in for measurement? How is very important for article journal? Equipment like in sport, like EMG, electromyographic, or anything.
Okay. Let me repeat the question to be sure I understood it correctly. So are you asking what kind of equipment and device I think is important to make good studies?
Yes.
Okay. That's an interesting question, yes. So normally good quality research should be possible with any device. Expensive, low budget, no device, anything should be possible to make good quality research. Of course, there are some fields and some topics where people expect certain devices, and some journals, they only accept if you do certain experiments with devices. I think it is unfortunate. Unfortunately, in certain fields, especially like coordination, if you're working with neuronal activation patterns and so on, you kind of have to use EMG. If you use some EMG, then you must be sure that devices you use are the best in this field, at least that is required for your specific purpose. It heavily depends on the purpose of your investigation and the required accuracy and precision you have. So it's not like always you need intramuscular EMG. It's not like always you need surface EMG. So it depends on the situation, the purpose, and so on. But if you have multiple products serving for the same situation, the same purpose, then, and they are heavily different in accuracy, then you should aim to take the one with the best accuracy. There is one way to, because this is very unfair, because not all institutions around the world have the same money and same equipment. One way to work around it is to make study designs that, because of the situation and the purpose of your investigation, you do not require the highest accuracy. If you measure something that by nature has a very large fluctuation, then there is no need to have a very, very precise device, because the natural fluctuation is much larger than the device accuracy. Then you can also take the second best or the third best, as long as the accuracy is higher than the natural fluctuation you want to observe. This is something worth to keep in mind. One other way to work around is to investigate things where you don't need expensive devices. The university in Italy, where I did my second PhD, they had a sports department, but I was enrolled in engineering, and so the methods, models, technologies PhD. So the sports department was very, very small. And what I did there was assessment of devices, but these devices were used in sports settings. So their equipment was very, very poor to what I was used before. But I was using a balance board. So I didn't need Vicon. I didn't need complicated or expensive force plates and so on. I was assessing devices that were very cheap. A balance board that is made of wood you can buy in the store, and then adding some sensors, okay, but they are relatively cheap, and then creating a software for it, and then with statistical means analyzing how well these cheap tools work. And in this faculty in Italy, they were working a lot like this. So making cheap alternatives for expensive devices, and making reliability, validity studies for how good these devices work and how you can use them in what settings. This way, it's very good. As long as you don't need, of course, an expensive gold standard as reference for validation, of course. Yeah. But in terms of balance, for example, there are very functional tests that serve for clinical purposes. They serve as gold standard, so you don't need any device for it. Yeah. I have currently worked on a paper and submitted to Gait and Postures about insoles that are simplified for the purpose of making it cheaper. So we did use PEDRX with 99 sensors. To be honest, I don't even know the price, but it's, I mean, compared to force plates, it's relatively cheap. And we used the PEDRX original sensor layer as a gold standard if you want to measure pressure, insole pressure. And then we calculated center of pressure using different layouts, integrating different sensors. So this was like different simulations you can just run on the computer, and no device for it. We just needed one insole. So this is also a way to assess simplified, cheaper devices. Yeah.
Okay, very clear. Okay, is it okay, Dr. Johan Lubis? Is it clear?
Yeah, is gold standard. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
one question.
yes.
I don't see research about research and development in the Scopus. What do you think? Article, I don't see article about research and development.
About what?
Research and
like
development.
Method research and development in the Scopus. What do you think about method research and development in the article?
Research method, and what is the second part?
Research and development in Indonesia. In here, like make an instrument. So how we make something tool or something tool can use for others to measure something, but he said that in Scopus in article they didn't found the method. And
I don't
what
see.
do you think about that? Or like that, people.
May I help?
Yeah, okay.
May I help put in Pak Johan?
Prof. Tandio, okay.
May I help? Sorry, Philip. Mr. Johan Shah means that what is your opinion about an article in journal with Scopus indexing, which is based on research and development? The article based on research and development approach in their research. Mr. Lubis haven't find yet any article in Scopus journal, which is based on research and development approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Research and development often refers to products, right?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
So I think the main reason here is that the typical
Lack of theoretical, right.
The typical research and development activities are made for companies or for products.
Okay.
And therefore, first of all, the companies don't want to share the intel in their products. They are willing to share the effect, but not how it's working precisely, so you cannot replicate it. The inability to replicate it is a problem why you cannot publish it. Because if the company doesn't want to tell the secret, of course, but as a researcher, you need to make it transparent. So it's not possible.
Yeah.
And then another problem is that in research and development for products, you usually have an intention of doing this this research. You are a little bit biased always, because you want to confirm how or that this product is working. So let's say a purely scientific approach would be, I investigate this product and I don't care at all what is the result. If the result is this is a very bad product, good for me, I publish.
Yeah.
I will tell, oh, huge difference, much worse than any other product in the market. The company, of course, will never want to publish something like this. So when you do research development for products, you have this problem, and this is the reason why it's usually not published.
Okay, and anyway, by the way, like this, in education, in the for us in the university in education, we sometimes we also develop, let's see, a new method. So the research and development approach not always connecting with the company. Sometimes we are the lecturer, we need to develop a kind of new method. So we work the research by research and development approach to find or to product a new method or a new approach for education purposes. What do you say?
I think this is good. One difficulty I can imagine is to make it applicable for other context, especially in education. Maybe you can only apply it in Indonesia or Southeastern Asia, but nowhere else in the world it works the same way, because you have different structures, different mentality. I don't know, and then it's not really interesting for international journals. So this will be difficult. But if you find or if you develop methods, education methods that are relevant for the world, then I think this is a very good opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's clear, Mr. Johansyah.
Yes,
Is it clear for you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tandia Harahayu, for helping us.
Okay.
So maybe Professor Tandia Harahayu have something to say.
Thank you very much, Phillips. Is it now is we all should be finished now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there will be another session.
Yeah, for next session on 16th of May.
Okay.
No, 16th of May, 20th of May. I'm sorry.
Okay. We are waiting for the next session. Philip?
Yeah, it's more interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very
so
much. Thank you
we
very
will
much.
see on 20th May, same time.
On the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank
Baik.
Bu Setio Rahayu. Thank you, Profesor Setio Rahayu.
Saya pamit ya, Mbak Titin ya.
Okay.
Matur suwun sangat.
Bye.
Ya,
J.
terima kasih. Thank you, Mr. Johansa and Mrs. Setio Rahayu. Maybe,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Thank
Philip,
you.
for the great and wonderful lecturing. Yeah, we hope this knowledge can help our students in their research to produce higher quality thesis and dissertation. As thanks to you and appreciation, we will give to Philip guest lecture certificate. Wait a moment. I will share screen. Okay, thank you. This certificate for you, for Dr. Renat Philip X Fuchs, yeah, PhD. Yeah, thank you very much, and see you next time. Yeah.
Not yet.
Oh, not
okay,
yet.
that's it. Yeah, already now.
Okay.
Yes. No, it's okay.
No S at Philips. It's only
Oh.
Philip.
Without S.
Yes. Philips.
If you verify.
Oh, Philips. Oh, okay.
I will revise it. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, later we revision for your name. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Back to Bu Titin. Maybe can close this event.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Setio Rahayu, as a coordinator program of Magister Physical Education Pasca Sarjana UNES. And before we are finished, let we take a picture together. Is it okay? Please turn on your camera. Turn on your camera all, and we take picture together. And Mr. Meldy, could you help for taking camera? And also thank you for Mr. Meldy who helping us for this Zoom. So he provide this Zoom so very well for this virtual lecture. And thank you for all participants that still in here until the finish. So this is already how many hours? 4 hours. Wow, that's very good. Thank you. So please take picture now. Sample?
Yes, already.
Oh, super fast. Really? All already?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Meldy. In here also have Mr. Marcono, Mr. Sugianto, thank you. Professor Sugianto, Professor Sugiharto, thank you. Thank you all students, and thank you all participants for the other university for joining this virtual lecture. So see you next time. Oh, in here also Mrs. Eva Farida from Medan. From Medan, so very far here, different island. And so see you next time on 20 of May 2021 at 1 p.m. in Jakarta time. If Taiwan time is at 2 p.m. So see you, and don't forget to write one paragraph and then send to Philip, and he will review what you're writing. Is it correct or not? So let's make a better our future. So thank you. And see you all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Philip.
Ya, Mr. Margono. Sudah difotoin.
Mr. Philip.
Huh?
Hello.
Thank you to all of you.
Yeah.
See you
I
soon.
promise you that I will never misspelling your name again. Mispronouncing your name again. I'm so sorry for.
Yeah. Next time I
Yes,
will.
next time I promise you I will never forget how to pronounce Fuchs. Fuchs, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Fuchs.
Sorry, Fuchs. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Then I will check for it next time.
Yeah.
Good. See you.
Okay,
Thank
see
you very
you,
much.
Mr.
Bye bye.
Okay, thank you. I will end this session.
You not yet have lunch, right?
Yeah.
Don't forget ice cream.
So please allow me to end this session.
Yes.
Thank you for your attention.
Don't forget for
Goodbye.
all participants to fill the form of the presidency, and a certificate will be directly to send to your email. Okay.